Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, I'm John ACKERLIND, an alcoholic. I'm very enthusiastic about this program. Very grateful for this way of life. It's terrific. And thanks for inviting me. And I love birthdays in Alcoholics Anonymous, chip days, because it isn't really natural for alcoholics to be sober, and it's a big deal. So happy ship day and birthday to you all. It's great. I have a bunch of friends in this room, far, far away and long, long ago, that I love very much. However, you have never seen me before. In a very short while, you will know me very intimately. And that's just one of the neat things that happens in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, that we can know each other on that level. I don't think I'm too presumptuous if I say that some of us here tonight sit with a bunch of burdens, and lots of if-onlys. But be that as it may, we are here in these rooms are still the lucky ones because we have a chance. Lots of people have this thing called alcoholism, doesn't have a chance, and for various reasons. For the record, my grandfather died from alcoholic delirium in 1910. He lived in a 2,000-acre place outside Stockholm, but that's what happened to him. My father had a problem with his liver in 1927, and nobody knew anything about this illness then. He was a giant of a man. He radiated vitality. Women adored him, men envied him, but he died 3 years later, and he only weighed 130 pounds when he died, and he didn't want to die at all, and he didn't have much of a chance. I was 8 years old then, and it is something to see a beautiful human being like he once was, because he was 6'2", and when he touched you, you realize his strength, but in 3 years he had deteriorated to absolutely nothingness. My father was an aristocrat. He was very vain and proud and arrogant. But he was also a very loving person. But I wasn't violent. And thanks to our program, I have been able to forgive him for that violence. And it's an important point. 99 out of 100 meetings I go to, we finish with the Lord's Prayer. And there is a line that says, "Forgiven as I forgive those who trespass against me." And I assure you, there was stuff in my inventory that I wish I could be forgiven about. And then we can't have two standards here. I'm supposed to be forgiven. I'm supposed to have an opportunity for new life. But anybody that did something to me, justice to them, or whatever you want to call it, it's an important point. Because if we don't address this thing, we will come in as victims and we will remain victims. And it will interfere in our own recovery. And that's why I bring this thing up. My older brother didn't have much of a chance for another reason. He had a little bit of pride, and it seems to be a commodity that we can't afford a luxury in this outfit. 20 years ago now, he lived in a castle outside Stockholm. He was married to a very beautiful girl. In fact, he married my girlfriend. I had a little bit of problem with that for a while. No, I'm glad he did. But he drank like I drank, and he blew it all. For 18 years he defended his right to drink. It is something, this insidious denial that some of us have. You know, this guy earned 150 grand a year, spoke 6 languages fluently, carried a Swedish flag in the Olympics on 3 occasions. For 18 years he lived in a room that cost $15 a month to live in, drank a fifth of whiskey every night, and just lived in the past. Nothing ever wrong with him. I tried to 12-step him a few times. His drunkard and mine was very similar. I wrote him a letter, page and a half, what I used to be like, and 3.5 pages about all the wonders that has happened to me since I joined the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a postcard back. Said, "Dear John, I'm sorry to hear about all your problems." So much for identification. I flew to Stockholm in 1978 and spent a couple of weeks with him. I invited him out here. He was here with me for a month. I took him to AA meetings. He died 9 years ago from yellow yonders. My younger brother has gone through scripts in La Jolla twice. First time was 16 years ago, and they told him there that he couldn't drink alcohol anymore. There was something really wrong with his liver, and he shouldn't drink booze anymore. They told him that for 90 days. But he doesn't drink the way I did, and that's all he's looking at. He has kind of 6, 7 whiskeys before dinner, 2 kinds of wine, coffee and brandy for dessert. It's kind of elegant. He even lights a couple of candles now and then, you know. I mean, it looks just like the commercial. It's really bullshit the whole day, really. He's still drinking. And you and I sometimes wonder what's wrong with people like my brothers. Don't worry about it. There is nothing wrong with that. Alcohol did something for my older brother to the day he died. It's still doing something for my younger brother. And that's the nature of the illness. And that's why I said in the beginning, and you and I are the lucky ones because we have a chance. Because of the evidences in these rooms that people like you and I, the way we drank and carried on, we can change and live without it and have fabulous lives. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. How to live good out there without it. I talk to newcomers. I love the feelings in these rooms when there are newcomers, and I like being a newcomer myself. It's very important to me. And I like to share with you why I like to be a newcomer. I hope I never forget the last year I drank, because I compromised on everything I believed in and stood for. I couldn't live or function without liquor. I didn't dare to go to sleep if I didn't have a fifth of whiskey in the refrigerator, because I had to have it when I woke up. And if I ran out of booze at midnight, I usually called an associate of mine in Baldwin Park and said, "Harold, next week, you will owe me $150 on this particular job, but if you give me $20 tonight, you won't have to pay me the $130 next week." And I drove a 100-mile round trip at midnight to pick up $20. I didn't dare to buy any booze in Baldwin Park because then I wouldn't make it home. And when I came home to Anaheim, where we lived at the time, I bought a fifth of Imperial Bourbon for $4.85. And then I was safe, and I had to live like that, and I hope I never forget that period in my life. I know some of us, after we get a little well, get the few dollars in our pockets and bedroom privileges again. We really forget how it was. In fact, my wife cut me off 6 months before I came into AA. She really ran out of humor out there. She stood out and looked at me one evening and said, "John, I wish you could find yourself a girlfriend so I wouldn't have to fool with you." She said, "You take forever." After sobriety to take forever, it's very commendable. It ain't fair, folks, let's face it. The other reason why I like to be a newcomer, I'd been going to meetings every day for 90 days, and Phil Petty talked one Sunday morning. And he stood up here and said, if you keep going to meetings, you will wake up one morning and realize and find out that you can function without alcohol. And it is not necessary to drink anymore, and you have a way to go. And I sat in that room and I said, my God, I've experienced those feelings. And it was the first time here it dawned on me that I wasn't hooked anymore. that I had some degree of choice over my own actions. And I had already started to experience the freedom here that I hadn't had in a long, long time. So I hope I never forget that period of Alcoholics Anonymous, the knowledge that I wasn't hooked and that I was free, and I hope I never take it for granted. Those are the two reasons why I like to be a newcomer. I didn't start to drink until I was 31 years old. I know it doesn't sound so promising right now, but that's how it was. But I'll share with you how I was when I was young. First of all, the reason why I didn't drink when I was young. When my father died, I promised my grandmother I was never going to drink, so I didn't drink. When I was 19 years old, I had gone to college a year. The war broke out. I went in the Air Force for 2.5 years. And after that, I went back to college for 1.5 years, and I was selling at night, and I was trying to help my mom. It was very important to me to play a man of the house part because my older brother was different. He was brilliant in school. He had scholarships to universities, and everything was mapped out for him. But I was different. And I could never figure him and me out in the first place. You know, this fellow, he never opened a book. He had A's in everything. I could study till 1 in the morning. I still failed. It really bothered me. Screw it, it's still bothering me. You know, I'm very willing. I try. I can be good for a short time, but when the bottom fell out or something negative happened, I couldn't figure out why I was such a screw-up. When I was young, I had an unbelievable inferiority complex. I'm a perfectionist on top of it, and that's not a good combination. I contemplated suicide a lot because I knew if I died, I would be with my dad. And you see, when he lived, there was security, prestige, and respect, and those things. And I tell you what I did when I was young. I just faked it. I pretended I was really together. I was very noisy and opinionated, and that gave me some false courage, and that's how I was when I was young. When I was 31 years old, I was employed by this door factory in Alhambra. My boss was alcoholic, and he taught me how to drink every day, and a new life began for me. It was an incredible thing. You know, we had early times at 8 o'clock in the morning, cocktails at 10, martini lunches from 12 to 2:30, made a couple of calls in the afternoon and went back to the office and typed up bids from 6 to midnight, drank whiskey. And I thought I landed in heaven. I used to come home to my wife and say, you know, this building business is out of this world. I never felt this good, ever, you know. And you know that in retrospect, I drank a fifth of booze a day from day one. For 2 years, I was never drunk, never hungover. I just felt good. And there's something wrong with your system when you can drink that much liquor and not get in trouble. I had an enormous capacity. And about emotionally what alcohol did for me. You know, when I was 12, 13 years old, and that my mother started to send me to psychiatrists. I had a real problem with my father dying so soon. And I started to play games like if I was a good kid, he was going to come back to me as a reward. And you know that in one sense, I suppose that the guilt or the pain was less. But you know, I lived in this thing, that I lived in fantasies and illusions for years. And it was way out there and weird. And you know, when I started to drink alcohol, it was like that had never happened. You know, the sky was the limit. I couldn't miss, you know. And that was how alcohol did for me emotionally. It was the most marvelous thing that ever happened to me for a couple of years. A year later, I owned the place. I had sold so many doors they couldn't pay me my commission, so they gave 1/3 of the stock of the company, and that was a success story. And what I'm going to give you now is the highlight of my drinking career. You know, when you own a place, you're a general manager, sales manager, which I was, but I was also the truck driver. I delivered all the doors I sold. I've never been afraid of working, and I used to work 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day, and I loved every minute of it. I had landed a big contract with American Housing Guild in San Diego, several $100,000 worth of door openings. And we lived in Corona del Mar at the time, and we had our little plant up on Palm Avenue in Alhambra. And I used to work there all day long and all night long in Alhambra, unload this 2.5-ton truck, you know. And I came home to Corona del Mar at 3:30 in the morning with this big truck with all those door openings. You'd be delivered from house to house before 8 in the morning, you know, in Claremont Hills. And I came home after Corona about 3:30 in the morning. My wife had a hot bath ready for me. I slid in the tub down, lit a candle and inhaled, you know, and laid back down in the tub. And she came in with a pitcher of martinis and sat down and drank martinis with me. 3:30 in the morning, it's really living. I lay down in the tub and I smoked that candle and I drank that martini and I spit it out the pimento, you know. And then I usually said, you know, I'm just a little immigrant and I own the goddamn place. A few years later, they fired me for my own door factory. I have 3 beautiful girls and a son, and we took them to church on Sundays. We did everything right to be Americans. The only problem with the church business was the last 4 years I drank. I was a morning drinker. She usually inspected me before we should leave, and many times she just took one look at me, said, not today. Hurt my feelings. And she took us down the street with the kids in the car, and I had to stand there in the corner and home, so sometimes I ran down the block after her, screaming and hollering, you know. My neighbors were out there talking about the lawn problem, and here I came running by, and sometimes I was strangely clad. My wife saw me in the rearview mirror coming after I in my pajamas, you know. So she stopped down the block and waited for me and rolled down the windows and said, what's the matter now, you know. And said, don't forget to pray for me, you know. I could take the sermon 20 minutes max, and then I had to have a drink, you know. 20 minutes into his talk, I just got up and said, I'll screw him all in. Then I went home and I drank Grand Scotch those days and played good music and became very spiritual. Played Stan Getz and Dave Brubeck and La Boheme and Coleman Hawkins and the big bands, you know. Now after sobriety, I even played Pink Floyd and Brian Ferry. He's coming here now into Hollywood Bowl, you know that? A couple of years later, it had progressed a little bit. My wife said to me one week, let us try the Episcopalian church next Sunday because the congregational certainly doesn't do the job. And I said, it sounds terrific. And she said, yeah, they have very colorful costumes there and they sing a lot and you like music. It might hit you, you know. And I had been drinking till 5 that morning. Still had a shakes when I woke up, so I went out in the kitchen and drank a little codeine cough medicine and 2 shots of whiskey to stop the shakes and tightened my belt and walked on with small steps and tried to look effective. Passed inspection and came to church. The only thing I can say to you, the routine in the Episcopalian church, it really ain't for drunks. It's a very busy place, you know. I mean, they got up and down and kneel and pray and sit and stand and sing. I was up and down 3-4 times, then my timing got off. You know? When they sat down, I stood up. Sweden, where we don't know the words, we sing tra-la-la. I had a couple of sodas there all by myself. The second time I came up there and gave the little deal, there was a guy 5 rows behind me. He said, sit down, you son of a bitch. Third time down praying, I couldn't get up again. I clung to that bench. I tried every trick in the book I knew to get up and couldn't make it. Tried it sideways and backwards and forward. Even tried to roll up. And she sat down and looked at me. She said, for God's sake, Johnny, get up. I said, it's an absolute impossibility. So they went up and down and I sat down and sang by myself. You know. Next time I looked behind me, they were all down praying, and here's this guy in the row behind me laying down his knees with his chin in his hand, and he mumbled and looked real serious. And he looked right at me. And I sat down on the floor and stared at him. You know, sometimes you look at the guy, you focus in and you lock and you can't move, you know. And he stared at me and I stared at him, and then I thought I better look a little casual, so I winked my eye to him. Kind of stopped him for a minute. Sure glad I wasn't in Laguna Beach that morning. So we didn't go back to the Episcopalian church. You know, I really never had any problem with alcohol until I tried to stop drinking. You know, when I started to try to stop drinking, I got into trouble with my liquor. My wife says to me one week, she said, you know, you drink too much. I said, what are you talking about? And she said, Johnny, you drink way too much booze. So I said, well, then I quit. And then I couldn't quit. And that's when it all began. Because when I had been off the sauce for a couple of days, I got the shakes. And then 2 shots of whiskey stopped the shakes. I could function and work. So then I had to con myself into why I had to have a couple of drinks all the time. And then I lied about it, and then I was hiding, and from then on it got worse. When I was into 2-3 years of my drinking, I was up to 2/5 of whiskey a day. The last year I drank, the last 10 months I drank, it didn't matter if I drank a pint or 3/5 of whiskey a day. I also drank 2 bottles of codeine cough medicine every day, and 6 anisins 4 times a day, and I was absolutely weird. You know? Those 10 months I couldn't get drunk and I couldn't get sober, and the guilt was on all the time, and I was no relief, and I just thought I was going crazy, and I probably was. And this is a terrifying time in our life because we can't tell nobody. I was just afraid they were going to find out I lived, and I know they were going to put me away somewhere. And you know, sometimes you and I, we talk about the alcoholic loneliness, and as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing like it. Because it is a total isolation, and we drink to live, and we know we are dying, there's no way out of it, and that's how it is. 2 years after the shakes began, weirder things happened to me when I stopped drinking. One morning at 4 o'clock, I sat straight up in my bed and looked in front of me, and this big white snake came out of the wall. You know, I never saw anything like it in my life, unbelievable. He came right out of the wall. He was snow white, had 3 black eyes. He was this big in the arm, and on his fattest bone he was 23 feet long. He came slowly across the room, stopped right in front of my face, and started to hiss at me. You know, this is like this, tongue dangling. I could even smell it. Kind of a Peralta High sweet malt cherry beef. The whole thing was incredible. And I sat down and said to myself, you know, I haven't had a drink for 3 days, so it can't be the booze. You know, the closer he came to me, the more I screamed. And the noise in my head from my own screams reached such a crescendo that it was eventually like my brain exploded from my own scream. It finally just said, pew! And then I blacked out and fell backwards. That was my experience with it. My wife told me in the morning, she said, something strange happened this morning around 4 o'clock. She said, you sat straight up, looked in front of you for quite a while, and then you said, ee! Really a trip and a half. One night I made love to her and she wasn't even there. And, that's kind of tricky. She was actually laying 2 feet away from me there. She said, what are you doing over there? I said, I beg your pardon. I always had a lot of class, you know. When she realized what was going on, she started laughing. I started to cry because I felt it was so humiliating to laugh at the guy who was doing his best. In the morning I had been out in the kitchen and had my codeine cough medicine and my bourbon. She met me in the hallway and she said, "Well, good morning, lover boy." I didn't feel any pain. I just smiled at all. But that's the best peace I've had in a long time. Needless to say, I love laughter in Alcoholics Anonymous. To me, that in itself is a spiritual experience. To me, it is very much part of the recovery program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Anything that you and I have laughed a little bit about tonight was absolutely the deepest tragedy when it happened. But when you and I, in this man of identification, when it comes to this insanity and this denial, can just laugh about the whole mess, it makes it possible for us to forgive ourselves and change. It's very much part of the recovery program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We started over many times, and every time I had the best of intention, and every time it got worse. And my wife had a suicide attempt in Palm Springs one time because she thought I didn't love her anymore. Wanted out of it and didn't know how to say it. And it was just not so at all, you know. I was absolutely panic-stricken to take that when I had to make the commitment to go down. I thought, what the hell is going to happen to me? And it was a disaster, you know. And the second day there, she locked herself in a bathroom, drank 100 aspirin, and said, "I can't live like this any longer. I'm going to commit suicide." And I tell you, I laid on that bed and prayed to God, hoping she would die so she wouldn't have to be with me anymore. Because I knew at that time in my life there was no way out of it for me because I had tried. 2 years after that incident, I came into AA. And you can draw your own conclusion of those 2 years, or my guilt connected with that. It was the same year they fired me from my door factory. I've been owning it for 8 years. You should have seen my attitude about that. I mean, you know, this is my means of income. And when they came down, my partner said, "Sign off." I just signed off. I said, "Who needs this headache anyhow? Now I can just drink and be happy," and that's how it is. Take everything that's near and dear to us before we are willing to throw in the towel for one reason or another. 2 days before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous was a Sunday morning at Thrifty Mart in Anaheim. I was picked up trying to steal a pint of liquor for $3.57. And you should have seen me that morning. I was drunk and unshaven. I weighed 246 pounds. I couldn't even defend myself. I just stood on and whimpered, "It can't be me. I mean, look where I came from." I was brought up in a beautiful family. We had 2 nurses that dressed and bathed us till we were 10, 12 years old. We had 7 gardeners to make the flower beds pretty where we were trotting around in our frocks, you know. We got a banana and 3 in the afternoon, and they read fairy tales for us every day, you know. It was gracious living where I grew up. But I tell you, that morning in Anaheim, I looked exactly like a person who has to steal a pint of liquor to live. That's how it was. The last 4 years I drank, there wasn't anything I didn't try to use to stop. You know, I had 13 years, 2 hours a day religious education I grew up. One time I swore on the Bible in front of my wife and kids. I said, "I swear to God I'm never going to drink again." I said, "I never broke my word of honor to you." And my wife said at the time, "You know, children, your father never has." And I thought, if I use this thing that means so much, well, maybe I can stop. 2 weeks later, I find myself drunk again. I went to a minister for counseling every week for an hour. For 18 months, I leveled with him. He told me one time, "You have to ask God to help you." And I said, "Walter, you are a good man. I'm not. You don't talk to your wife the way I talk to mine in the evenings when she bugs me about my drink, so God doesn't want to have anything to do with me." I tried. And that gentleman, he read a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find out how he could best help me, and he realized that him and I, we lacked identification, that I had to find my bottom further down alone. He even suggested a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea what it meant, Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea. When he wouldn't talk to me anymore, I went to a marriage counselor, a psychologist in Santa Ana. I spent $2,000 with this doctor. There wasn't anything he said to me that my wife didn't tell me for free 3 times a day, you know. There wasn't anything he said to me either that wasn't the truth. Everything he said was the truth. One time he stood He said, you know, John, what's wrong with you? And I said, tell me, Doc. And he told it all my secrets and all my emotional problems. I said, Doctor, you're absolutely right, and that's why I drink, because I can't stand myself the way I'm put together either. So then he laid on me, I hurt my wife and my kids with my deal. So what do you do then? Do what I did. I went on the wagon, and the tragedy with that at this stage of the game was simply this, that the more sober we become, the more we realize how we hurt our loved ones. And that in itself drives us back to drinking again, because that's the only way we know to get out from under the guilt. And so it is. There's a lot of capable people in the field of alcoholism today, but I sure don't envy them, because the nature of the illness is still the same today as when I came in. As long as alcohol is doing something for us, it is impossible for anybody talking out of using it, and that's the nature of the illness. And that's why I said in the beginning that you and I are the lucky ones because of the evidences in these rooms. The last Christmas I drank. I bought a dapple gray Arabian horse. I thought it was a hobby I could stop drinking. Came home now in the beginning of December, said, you know, if I only had a baby, and I think I could stop drinking. You know? And she looked a little strange, to say the least. And I bought this beautiful horse, 3.5 years old. I went up to the London shop in Beverly Hills and bought my outfit. Beautiful Stetson hat and a Harris tweed jacket, the English yacht purse, a Spanish cane, and I wore my father's monocle. Looked real good. And I was sober with that thing for a day and a half. The next day I had a bunch of martinis and fell off the horse too, you know. And here I tried all these profound things. And then one day my wife comes with this and says, you know, for years, because of the children we have stayed together, but now because of them we have to part. And either you go down and try that thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to leave again. And that's how I came in, and I didn't think this would work either, you know. And the only reason I went down to the Alona Club in Anaheim, because I didn't want to be kicked out again, because that had happened before. And I came in after the Alona Club, and there was a lady behind the coffee bar said, do you have a drinking problem? I said, no. Get along as famously with it. Can you do something for my wife? She's crazy, you know. and you know, and that, I just had absolutely no idea anything could happen in here, you know. And I tell you something, alcohol was not my problem when I came into AA to that Alona Club. Alcohol had been my solution for so long, and we so slowly and so gradually grow into our relationship to liquor. It's impossible for us to see where we are in relationship to liquor and admit it, because for a long time it worked. And that is part of the insanity. It might work like it used to, you know. And I tell you something, I think this is probably one of the things why God is so merciful to us. We actually don't know how bad it is when we come in, because if many of us had known precisely how bad it is when we come in, many of us would do something much more drastic. And but there's a line that covers us in the book. It says more will be revealed, and thank God for that line. And the next day, for one reason or another, it happened to me. I got up in the morning, I went out in the kitchen, I drank a little codeine cough medicine, 2 shots of whiskey, and brushed my teeth. Drove down to the Alona Club in Anaheim and polished off a pint of Seagon 7 on my way down there, and came in there early about 8 o'clock in the morning, and asked to call my wife and tell her I'm here already. And then I stood down and talked a little bit, or bullshitted, you know, and then I went out and had 4 double martinis for lunch. Came back to the club and asked them to call her again and say I was there for the 2nd time to show her how sincere I was. And then I should go home and buy a 5th, as I've been to AA 3 times. And this guy is standing at the coffee bar, and he's standing there looking at me and listening to me. He said, Johnny, why don't you come home with me and let us talk? And I said, okay. His name was Charlie Vick, and he became my sponsor. And we sat in his patio, and he told me his story. And that's what I think is important in Alcoholics Anonymous. One drunk talking to another, and the identification between the two. And when he was through with his story, I realized that he was worse than I was, and he depended more than I did on it. And he was sober. I said, "You were that bad and you can stay off the sauce?" And he said, "Yeah." And I knew he was telling the truth. But I tried to wiggle out of it one more time. I said, "Charlie, you don't understand. Every time I stop drinking, I get the shakes. Weird things happen to me when I stop drinking." He said, "Johnny, you will only shake for 4 or 5 days, and then you never have to shake again as long as you live." And I didn't know that. I sat down and I thought, what information this guy is coming up with here, you know. Then he told me about the disease of alcoholism. He called it an malady of the body coupled with the obsession of the mind, and he said the first drink is a mental one to make you comfortable. And then the body takes over and craves more booze, and you cannot control your drinking pattern or your behavior pattern. So things started to make a little bit of sense to me that afternoon. I was in a meeting that night, and when they read portion of chapter 5 here, I just said, "Please God, help me today to stay sober." And it wasn't a big deal. You know, I always thought the spiritual experience would be something like, kaboom, "Yes, John, what can I do for you?" You know? But it wasn't like that at all. It was merely a feeling. And my thoughts were these, that perhaps after all this, life's away from me too. When I came home that night, I said to Karen, I said, "You know, it happened to me tonight. I don't have to drink anymore." And she said, "Your eyes look different." I haven't had a drink of alcohol or any codeine, cough medicine, or strange pills or funny cigarettes since that day, and it's 31 years and 4 months and 4 days ago now. And you all knew, you might sit down and say to yourself, "Well, it must be easy for you to have all that time on the program." But it wasn't easy then, and that's what we're dealing with right now. You know, I was not a great success when I came in here. I had a lot of anxieties about my kids. I wanted to be a good father. I knew I wasn't most of the time. I was $36,000 in the hole, and they were all small bills and all due. And Karen's suicide attempt just about drove me crazy. It's very hard to live with yourself when you realize that you're a broken and not a human being spirit. But I didn't drink and I went to meetings. And that's all I had going for me for quite a while. But I just like to tell you all new tonight, those first 2 months of my sobriety, I had the most unbelievable fears. I couldn't handle nothing. When the phone rang at home, I just pointed at it. And I just split and hid in my closet. I sat down on the floor in my closet and I just wept. I was scared to death. I had about 10 days of sobriety. I sat in a stag meeting and blurted out. I said, "You guys don't understand, but I feel so damn guilty." And I was an old timer that said, "The reason you feel so guilty is because you're guilty." And there were guys like that that saved my life, you know. For the first time I could admit that it was my fault without reservation. As long as we pin it on somebody else or something else, nothing can happen to us. But I just came to the conclusion whatever they had done or she had done or said, I drove them to it. And when I took them to that basis, I was free. But when that meeting closed that night, it was probably the most crucial time for me here because I felt trapped. I felt I was in a corner I couldn't get out of. I actually regretted that I'd copped out and admitted it was my fault. The only thing I had going for me here then was this, that I knew under no circumstances could I go back to drinking again. No matter what, I couldn't escape the booze anymore. I had done enough damage. I had no more rights when it came to liquor. And whatever was coming my way, I just had to face the music. But I couldn't split with booze anymore. So I'd actually taken the first 2 steps in this program and didn't know it. But how do you turn your wheel in life over to the care of God as your understanding? What's a spiritual experience in these rooms? That happened to me moments later the same evening. As I stood all alone and afraid, this guy came up to me. I never saw him before. And he just comes over and put his arm around me and said, "Johnny, don't worry, everything is going to be all right." And I believed him. That's how it began for me with higher power. It was just like those guys of my welfare taught. And I just trusted them. For quite a while, those same guys actually gave me the courage to face my wrongs and my difficulties. And they talked to me in a fashion I never experienced before because they didn't point fingers and there was no judgment. They just shared their own experiences from heart to heart. And this love and this care that goes on in these rooms is really the most healing commodity that we can, you know, that really is the most fantastic thing that goes on here, you know. And everybody is included. Nobody is excluded here. Everybody, you know. And it's incredible. And you all knew, I envy you what you're going to find out about yourself, providing you go to meetings. I just envy you what you're going to find out about yourself, providing you go to meetings. And you don't believe me now, and I didn't believe it then, but it was actually the greatest opportunity I ever had in my life when I was beaten down to nothing, so don't fret over your all being done. You sit in an opportunity if you throw in the towel and let us love you and help you a trip and a half. Karen didn't believe I was going to stay sober when I came in. It took 2 years of sobriety before she realized I meant business. And you know, when we come in, we want them to believe us. And they say we are sensitive and all that stuff, you know. But for one reason or another, I understood. She didn't dare to believe it. Every time we had kissed and made up before, any time the thing was right between us, I always went back to drinking again. So she didn't dare to believe it. And I understood that. See, when it comes to trust, it's nothing we can demand. It's something we have to earn. And that's what the day at a time is all about. And besides that, there are stuff that's going on between you and me in these rooms. I mean, we come in here and you're doing just fine and just hang in there. It's going to get better. And we have this whole support group here, and we don't have to go through nothing alone anymore. It's incredible. Then they come and I have 2 months of sobriety and say that sobriety got to be number one in your life. I said, no. I said, my kids come first. I love them more than my own life. And Charlie said, well, without sobriety, you won't have them. You have a letter in your pocket to prove it, which was true because I was kicked out of it. I said, well, then my business, I got to pay them bills. And he said, you know, you drank up a door factory. You're 36 grand in. Don't stay sober, you're going to blow this deal too. And every yabba I came up, he plugged it. And I realized it's true. Without sobriety, I don't have a chance at all. And then it comes to, there's no conditions on sobriety. I said, what do you mean no conditions? I mean, if she could forgive me and my job could go a little better and this pressure could get off, I could consider this damn thing. There's no conditions on sobriety, because one of the conditions you put up and set up might not come true, and then you blame AA for it, and then you go out and get drunk again. And for one reason or another, I bought the package. Now, sobriety is number one in my life. There's no conditions on sobriety. Then something spiritual can happen to us, because I tell you how it was in my house. You know, I got up in the morning, and my wife would say, before you had a booze as a crutch, now you have those damn meetings. Or you're kind of a weakling who can't stand on your own 2 feet. And I said, I suppose so, you know. And then I go out and I work all day. Do you have to do this? Okay. I don't want you to miss out on anything. So I go out and I work all day, you know. And I come home just before dinner, you know. And I have 25 phone calls about the people I owe the money to. And, you know, and I mean, I absolutely petrified from fright. I mean, Jesus, I couldn't make any commitment. I mean, I was so behind. I mean, I couldn't make a dent on nothing, you know what I mean? And I'm just hanging in there, staying sober all day at a time, you know. So there's 25 phone calls about when were we going to get paid, you know. And then I had a quick bite to eat, and I run out to a meeting, and I have a reprieve here for an hour and a half. Then I come home there 11 o'clock at night, and I'm supposed to thank God for my sobriety that day. I lay down and said, God, what a terrible day I've had. What an absolutely terrifying day I've had. He said, yeah, but I didn't drink. I said, what's going on here? I used to get drunk over a lot less. This thing called sobriety, it must be mine. It's my own. It's the most decent thing that has happened to me in a long time. It must be some sort of a gift or something. And then we start to have a consistency in our living, and then we add to it. And then it's God's business, all of it, good and bad. And if He's part of the bad stuff must just be a period within a period. And when we have gone through that period, we realize what we had to go through, and it all starts to fall in place. You know, and this must be a gift of God as far as I'm concerned. But you know, the admission and the acceptance of it is part of that gift. You know, many people say, when will my ship come in? This is the ship. 9 out of 10 alcoholics don't make this program because they don't buy what I'm talking about. 9 out of 10 alcoholics either die or crazy from this illness because they don't buy what I'm talking about. 9 out of 10 alcoholics have periods of sobriety, go in and out of treatment centers and care units. They go in and out of meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous because they don't buy what I'm talking about. You notice in chapter 3 it said we have to conceit our innermost self that we are alcoholics. That's the first step of recovery. The admission and the acceptance of that. It's part of this thing called sobriety. It's part of the gift of God. It's a divine intervention as far as I'm concerned. Why did I see it? You know, why did you see this thing and grab it and run with it? Why didn't my brothers? How many people have you and I 12-stepped over the years here? They don't want it. It's an incredible thing. And I tell you something, when I realized that this thing was probably the most fantastic thing that I've ever gone through in my life, I felt special. I felt like I was a God's kid, and we all are God's kids here. But you know, it is an absolutely fantastic thing what's going on here. And you know, some people had addressed themselves as addicts tonight. What's the difference between an addict and an alcoholic? You know, a heroin addict doesn't identify with somebody on coke. The people on coke feel superior to alcoholics for one reason or another. And, you know, and many of them say, why, if I only had a program like Alcoholics Anonymous? Narcotics Anonymous and Coke Anonymous are doing a great job today, have a lot of credibility. But what is it with us? What is our out? 9 out of 10 of us don't make it. It's like Clancy says, my case is different. It's going on up here, you know. It's an incredible thing, you know. And I mean, so here we are part of this thing. So now, like I like to say to you, now my sobriety is right. My AA life is fine. My work starts to go better. And I come home after work, and then my kids come and say, hi, Dad, can we talk? And now the kids are in place. And every day there is something happening to us that's spiritual in our life that I tell you something, sometimes in my life at least, the only thing that was right in my life was when I didn't drink. You know, God damn it, but I didn't drink. And that is right. And I'll tell you another thing, it's worthwhile to fight for sobriety. But every day we stay sober, something spiritual happening in our immediate area that really is fantastic, you know. Then 2 years later my wife comes and says, hey, it wasn't always your fault. I said, now I can die, you know. I just had to cheer you up a little bit. And now this is fine, you know. Now my wife is in place, and she starts to trust that this is going to be all right. Long ago, she said, you know, this life we live today is the most fabulous adventure. And it was so hopeless and tragic at one time to completely turn around. There's even a degree of innocence between us today. And that's almost impossible to believe that has come to pass because she is just as busy now as I'm in AA. And we have seen so many people over the years have turned around and started to be good to one another. Nothing is in vain. All that bad stuff is going to benefit somebody else down the line, so don't worry about it. And sometimes we wonder, what profound amends can I make to them to make it all right? There's no profundity here. It has nothing to do with intention, promises, gift. We can't bribe them no more. It doesn't matter how many good things you and I do. We come home drunk, it's all canceled out. It means nothing. The only amends we can make to ourselves and our loved ones is stay off the booze a day at a time. The rest of the program will follow little by little, but we got to start somewhere, you know. And you know, I like to tell you that I went to 7 meetings a week the first year I was sober. I've gone to 5 meetings a week ever since. Seems to be a lot of meetings. I'm up 6:30, 6:45 every morning. I work very hard. It's a privilege as far as I'm concerned. I have a fantastic schedule. And people say, Jesus, what a schedule, and all those meetings. I tell you, I live more normal. I live more normal than normal people do. The only difference, I'm aware of it. The last 4 years I drank. I worked 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day to deliver something so I could invoice something, so I could collect enough money, so I could buy enough booze and codeine to survive a day at a time. It's a full-time job to stay drunk. When I came in here this many years ago, Carolyn, she was 13, 10, 8, and 6. That's how old they were when I came in. With my schedule I've had in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have had time to play tennis with them twice a week while they grew up, taught them to swim and dive. And I taught them how to ride that horse I fell off. They had him for 10 years. You know, they had him, that horse, for 10 years. I relived my youth with those kids. I experienced everything with them that I wish my father could have experienced with me. And it's just like I have sensed his presence all along on this journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no void or emptiness in here. It's just a different kind of communication, you know. And both my mother and father died much too soon. And I just feel this way, thanks to our program here, that anytime I think of them, they think of me, and so on. And it's just that sensitive and complete as far as I'm concerned. I know that we are a little close, and I would like to polish this off. And this one here says 5 to 9. I have a Rolex. It says the same thing. I pay my own gas, okay? And I would like to just give you a little hope before I sit down. You know, I know you're a little bugged. I mean, some of these old-timers go crazy when you go 3 minutes overtime. I have a friend in Glendale. His name is Bob Lemke. He's a full-blooded German. I had a little problem with the Germans during the war, you know. But I knew Bob for 4 years, and I realized I loved him. He's a great AA. He does a lot of 12-step work, help a lot of people. For the last 18 years, he has invited me to Glendale every January when he has had his birthday. Mind you, he invites me up there. The 9th of January this year, he had 30 years of sobriety. But I have spoken to at that birthday group at his for the last 18 years. But he's one of those staunch old-timers that you don't save any souls after 10, buddy, that type, you know. And you know, it's 10 o'clock, and I had a minute and a half to wrap up my story, you know, just like now. You know, and he sits back down, it's 10 o'clock, and he shouts to me, and he, by the way, he even speaks funny. You know, I mean, you know, he was born in this country, has more of an accent than I have. I can't figure out. He must practice every night or something, you know. But he sits back there at 10 o'clock and he shouts, John, for God's sake, it's 10. I said, Lemke, this is only an AA meeting. We ain't marching into Poland tonight. You know, so I like to give you this episode. You know that the 12 steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's the recovery program. But it takes a while before it falls in place. And I share this little episode with you about what the group, the fellowship, these rooms are all about in the meantime, you know. I love in the beginning of the book that it says, alcohol is a mere symptom of something deeper-seated emotional. It sure covers me. I love in the beginning of the book where it says, God as I understand him. It must be the most spiritual line that has ever been written. Think about a line that is written that doesn't interfere in anybody's religion, you know. It is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I love in the beginning of the book that says, we are 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state, though mind and body. I mean, what a promise, you know. But the group and the fellowship. You know, there was another guy that came into Anaheim. His name was Bill Schellenberger. He was a framing contractor. And we became the dearest friends. He was framing 110 houses for a gentleman developer out my way years ago. His name was Alva Wilson. He was built about 1,000 homes a year. He was a 72-year-old gentleman, and he was fantastic. And Bill is framing 110 houses for Mr. Wilson. And I came out the Friday afternoon to see what my guys were doing. It was in July. It was 84 degrees hot. And I come out on job site, and Bill is up on the second floor unnailing on roof rafters. And he was a good-looking guy, you know, 6'2", you know, red handkerchief around his forehead and no T-shirt, shorts on, a big belt and a big hammer on a 30-foot tape and construction boots, and looked pretty much up there when he was swinging the hammer, you know. But he saw me coming down the street. And just then Mr. Wilson and 6 vice presidents came down the cul-de-sac in their 3-piece suits, you know what I mean, the bank on them guys, you know, and they could look their project over. But Bill saw me. And he stood up there on the second floor and said, "John!" Took one step off the roof, bounced right down there and came up like nothing and threw himself around me and kissed me twice. You know, you know, here we are, 2 big guys in a construction job. Just, wow, big guys, you know, there, you know. And we stood there, you know, and hugging each other, you know. And Mr. Wilson is standing there looking at us, you know. He said, "What's going on with you guys?" And Bill said, "Oh, Mr. Wilson, old John and I went through Alcatraz together." But he knew better. He stood down and looked at us. He was really serious. He had tears in his eyes. And said, "No, I don't think so. But whatever it is, it's beautiful." And that's what's going on here between us. Chuck Chamberlain, all the years he lived amongst us, trying to show us what's going on in these rooms. It's called love with no conditions. Love with no conditions. You and I can be who we are and what we are, and in spite of it, we're loved. There is nothing like it on the face of this earth. And then this ism that you and I have, it makes us belong. We belong to each other. There's a sense of belonging in these rooms that is haunting. It's a fact of reality. Alone we cannot do it, but together we can. The room, the group, the fellowship will carry us when we can't care for ourselves. There is nothing like it on the face of this earth, this love with no conditions going on in these rooms. I like to say to you that when I was 13 years old, I used to sit and look out over the ocean in Sweden. And I had intentions and anticipations and dreams. I'm 72 years old now. And I look out over the ocean in Laguna Beach every day. And I have intentions and anticipations and dreams. And I'm extremely vulnerable. And I thank God every day for that sensitiveness that you and I had. That sensitiveness that we used to curse. What's the matter with me? Why do I overfeel in all directions? What the hell is the matter with me? That's sensitiveness. When we practice the principles of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, it will become a blessing because it will function like a thermostat, and it will motivate us to take the action that's laid out in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. The action we take sets us free. Chuck used to say you can't think yourself into good living. You have to live yourself into good thinking. It's the action we take that sets us free. But Chuck said another thing. He said life is tough, and life deals us blows. And sometimes even with longevity on the program, we get into the negative and into those things. And said it is the distance from God we are, but self is involved here. It's actually a conscious separation from God. And conscious implies that I have something to do about that. And there again, the action we take sets us free. You know, it's an incredible thing. You all knew, if you can just believe this, we only wish you well, and we only want good things for you. If you can just believe that and take that with you, you will never wake up lonely anymore. because you know by now there is a way to go and to live. I cannot for a moment believe that God would take us through all these things, bring us in here and show us this way to live if he didn't have any plans for us. It really wouldn't make any sense at all. So you all knew, do this. Do what we do. Don't drink and come to meetings. It's the best deal in town. Thank you.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.